I am deeply affected by the events. I'm not trying to justify my actions. But nobody knows how much I was suffering. And what I was going through. Every day I ask God and my daughter Yelene for forgiveness. These were the pain-filled words of Cristel Candelario, a 32-year-old Ecuadorian woman who was arrested and about to receive a sentence for the atrocious and inhumane act she committed against her 16-month-old baby. No one in the room, not the lawyers, not the judge, not the forensic scientist had seen a case like this in all their years of work. No one felt pity or compassion when they heard the woman's statement. All concurred that Kristel's act towards her baby was inexcusable, and even prison wasn't sufficient punishment for her crime. But the question here is, what did Kristel do to her daughter? Cristel Candelario, born on September 11, 1991, is from Guayaquil, Ecuador. But she had emigrated to the United States several years ago in search of a better life. In her new residence in the North American country, this girl lived with her parents and her 7-year-old daughter. In her childhood, the woman grew up in a healthy environment where she was always protected and loved, something she did not do with her own offspring. In her young adulthood, she completed her university studies in her native country and graduated as a teacher before emigrating. Kristel met a young man named Henry Garcia through Facebook. On this application, they maintained a long-distance relationship because he lived in Ecuador, until one day they decided to meet on a vacation in the Dominican Republic. It was there, as a result of their love, that Kristel became pregnant. But Henry found out about the pregnancy when each had returned to their own country. From that pregnancy, their daughter, the second one, Jaylin, was born, who unfortunately would be or is the protagonist of this story. Beautiful memories. It's the only thing left for those who knew little Jaylin Candelario. She was just 16 months old. Kristel's life seemed to be going well. She had her parents with her and her 2 daughters, but not everything was as it seemed. In her youth, the woman had started to have health problems, not only physical, but also mental, which plunged her into a deep depression that caused her to faint and lose consciousness. In her native country, she had received treatment on numerous occasions, but in the United States, things are different. Kristel supported her family with her salary, which led her to not be able to stop working and neglect her mental health, apart from the fact that medicine in that country is extremely expensive. In the country, in the same way, she worked at Hope Academy North Coast as an instructional assistant between the year 2019 and 2020. She then got a better job at City Sense Academy Glenview, an elementary school in Cleveland. There she worked as a substitute in education. But as soon as the authorities of the place were notified of what their employee had done, they did not hesitate to fire her. Until that moment, the Children and Family Services had no previous records of cases involving Kristel in similar acts. No one could believe that the woman who spent 5 days a week in constant contact with children and young people was a wolf in sheep's clothing. The academy that had taken her in as a substitute immediately issued a statement to disassociate itself from the woman, which read, "Regarding the charges filed against Cristel Candelario, substitute assistant of the building at Sense Academy Glenview, since November 2022 we have dismissed her with immediate effect." The company also added that it was conducting a series of internal investigations to determine if there were any complaints of inappropriate conduct, fearing that any of the children may have been harmed in some way under the care of this teacher. It seemed that no one had seen that Kristel had indeed had dangerous attitudes in the past. Unfortunately, they could not prevent the tragic end. After the crime, some witnesses revealed that it was not the first time that the young mother left her little daughter alone, or in the care of strangers. A neighbor from the neighborhood where she lived with her daughters commented that the woman asked her to take care of her baby for a weekend. She agreed without hesitation. She loved the girl. Jaylin was a happy baby, always smiling and curious about things. She was a wonderful baby, like any other girl. But time passed, and the days turned into weeks, and there was no trace of Jaylin's mother anywhere. Kristel disappeared for several weeks without claiming her baby of just a few months. Desperate, The neighbor constantly called her, asking her to come back for her girl, because she could no longer afford all the expenses involved in keeping a baby. The woman needed money to be able to buy the milk. But Cristel, on the other hand, didn't seem to worry that her girl was starting to call her neighbor mom, and it's that her neglect confused the poor baby who no longer knew who her mother was. That's how far they were getting. Every time the woman remembered that her baby was without her mother, she would return and retrieve her as if nothing had happened. But the neighbors in the neighborhood had asked her on several occasions never to leave her alone again. Instead, Kristel seemed not to listen, as if she didn't care about Yailin's fate. Everyone was distressed, fearing that something bad would happen to the baby who needed maternal love more than ever. Sadly, the day, or more accurately, the unforgettable, devastating 10-day event became a reality for the entire community. And with this, now yes, let me tell you what happened. Kristel's parents, along with their eldest granddaughter, had gone on vacation when the young mother made the worst decision of her life. Had they known what would happen in their absence, the grandparents would have also taken their younger granddaughter away from her dangerous mother. It all started on June 6th, 2023, when Kristel left her 16-month-old daughter abandoned in her crib at their residence in Cleveland. She packed her bags and left the house without looking back, leaving the little girl, who obviously had no idea of her mother's dark intentions, without food, without water, and without adult supervision. Kristel had left her alone on other occasions, but always under someone's care. This time she surpassed her own limits without even hesitating. And it was just an impulse that I had to take. I grabbed my few things and ran out of the house like someone was chasing me. Where do you leave your daughter when you run out of the house? The little girl was always in her playpen, so she even stayed there. That's where I found her when I came back. The hours passed and turned into days without anyone knowing that Jaylene was alone, trapped in her crib. On June 9th, Cristel was having a wonderful vacation in Puerto Rico, as if nothing, enjoying the warm weather, the cool breeze, and the sand under her feet. As I tell you, as if this mother didn't care about anything, if you can call her a mother. In fact, without hesitation, not even for a second, Cristel shared photos of her vacation with her internet friends in a post that today is totally chilling. The time that is enjoyed is the real time lived. That's what she wrote next to a photo of her walking on the beach on a sunny day. The leisure trip away from her duties proceeded without issues. She had planned on staying just 8 days, but they quickly turned into 10. What do you think about leaving your daughter there in the crib? Honestly, at that moment I didn't think anything. I was, I believe, bewilderingly stunned. Cristel was out until June 16th. She came back around 8 in the morning, intending to proceed with her life as if nothing had happened. But when she opened the door to her home, a strange smell hit her hard. She crossed the threshold and headed to the room where her baby's crib was. There she found the horror that she herself had caused. Her daughter was unconscious inside the crib, so desperate for the image that would be seared not only into her retina, but into everyone who would witness her perversion. She called the police between tears and screams. While they waited for help to arrive, Kristel dressed her child in a clean suit before the emergency services arrived. But the change of clothes obviously did not hide the marks of the horrors the little one had gone through during her 10 days alone. The countenance of a mother desperate for her daughter began to crumble. Authorities said the minor died agonizing in this crib full of urine and feces. When authorities arrived at the home to assist the baby, in what they imagined would be a case like all the others, they encountered a true nightmare come to life. Yaelin was lying on a mattress inside her crib, wrapped in a dirty cover and covered in her own urine and feces. The neighbors living on West 97th Street in Cleveland are desperate over what the police say happened inside this house. We couldn't believe that she had gone. As expected, the paramedics declared this innocent little one lifeless. The girl couldn't withstand the abandonment for so long, evidently. Jaylene was extremely dehydrated, emaciated, with sunken eyes, dry lips, and fecal matter in her mouth and nails, which meant she had tried to eat her own waste in an attempt to survive. The paramedics did not hesitate to scrutinize the mother. They couldn't understand how this had happened, but they had no doubt that she had something to do with it. Candelario was immediately arrested. On the other hand, the girl's body was transferred to a forensic center for the necessary examinations to be carried out. There they discovered with horror that Yaelin weighed about 3 kilos less than on her last visit to the doctor 2 months earlier. Since her arrest, Cristel has remained in Cuyahoga County Jail with a bail of $1 million. She had multiple psychological assessments during her captivity. No one expected that as soon as the trial began, the negligent mother would plead not guilty to what she had done. Criminal lawyer Manuel Portela, who was not involved in the case but followed it closely due to its media coverage, assured that this woman could face the full weight of the law. This could lead to a sentence of severe punishment. The whole country was shocked by Jalene's case and demanded the harshest punishment. In her trial, Kristel faced charges of aggravated homicide, 2 counts of murder, criminal assault, and endangering children. Therefore, it began to be speculated that she could receive a sentence of up to 80 years, setting aside the death penalty. At the trial, the forensic pathologist, Elizabeth Mooney, emphasized to the court that children experience more extreme separation anxiety between the ages of 9 and 18 months, given that Jalen was only 16 months old. According to the doctor, the baby's last days were totally unbearable. And I say unbearable, because the pain and suffering she endured lasted not only hours or days, but possibly even a week. The forensic doctor testified in front of the judge and jury that the feeling of abandonment for days, along with the pain of hunger and extreme thirst, are a type of suffering that no one could fully understand. I don't believe you or me. The trial listeners, on the other hand, could not erase their expressions of horror from their faces. It seemed like the story of a horror fiction, not real life. The prosecution presented evidence of the woman's history of leaving the girl unattended. In fact, in a recording from surveillance cameras in the area, she was seen leaving the house without the girl and returning 2 days later. This was then categorized as repeated negligence. This accusation was also supported by the testimony of neighbors and acquaintances who had taken care of the little girl at least once and had asked Kristel not to leave her alone. Filled with pain and guilt for not having done enough, several of them swore they would have been willing to take care of her once more if they had known the woman's macabre plans. But then, who could have imagined that this woman would commit such an atrocity? The autopsy results revealed signs of abuse and neglect on the body, such as bruises, burns, and scars, meaning that Jaylene had not only suffered in the last agonizing moments of her short life, but her mother had previously mistreated her. In turn, Candelario's lawyer, Derek Smith, tried to justify his client's behavior by saying that she had mental health issues and had attempted to take her own life by overdose in 2023, after which she was administered antidepressants. Then, Smith said that the woman stopped taking her medications, which allegedly triggered side effects, and that influenced her judgment at the time she left Jaylene and went on vacation. But instead, the prosecution said that, according to the photos recovered from the defendant's phone, she looked happy socializing with friends and without a trace of concern for her daughter, who was alone at home. The entire jury was obviously finding it hard to believe that her judgment, clouded by her mental problems, lasted so many days, without at least once crossing her mind the image of her little one alone and helpless. Thus, during the trial apart, Candelario expressed that she was battling depression and other mental health issues. The defendant also had her turn to speak and commented before the court that she prayed daily, asking for forgiveness, and added that she believed that God and Jaylene had forgiven her. It was in January and February of 2023 in the hospital because she had, as I mentioned, emotional and mental problems. On one of these 2 occasions, I wanted to harm my own life. The criminal expressed that she took responsibility for her actions, but that she was going through emotional stress and had had sentimental problems with the girl's father. Candelario also stated the reasons that led her to take her trip to Detroit and Puerto Rico for several days. She mentioned that leaving her daughter alone and going on vacation was due to an impulse caused by the situation she was living in. The mother explained that during the trip with the girl's father, she was angry and distracted, and even her partner asked about the baby, as he found it strange that Kristel was away from Jaylene, given that she had just turned 1 year old a few months ago. And when he mentioned the girl to Cristel, it was as if he reminded her of someone who was not present in her mind, as if he had asked about an acquaintance she had not seen for a long time to give you an idea of how this woman was thinking. The woman simply replied, "And that's fine." And then she changed the subject and continued enjoying her getaway, understanding how she could sleep, how she could be there for so many days. In reality, I wasn't sleeping. It seemed like I was sleeping, but I wasn't actually sleeping. The criminal confessed that for brief seconds she thought about calling a family member or neighbor to check on her daughter's well-being. But she backed out and didn't do it. For a moment, things could obviously have ended differently. And if she had done this, obviously the girl would be alive right now. But no, I never did, and it was my mistake. This is what the woman declared before the judge. Those who did have the opportunity to speak were the parents of this criminal who pleaded for mercy to the judge. Her mother, Ketty Torres, said that her daughter had struggled with health problems, including mental illnesses and fainting. According to the woman, when her daughter stopped taking medication, her depression and anxiety worsened and contributed to her inability to make sound decisions. Torres finally confessed in front of the judge that neither she nor anyone in the family was aware of what was happening in her absence. On the other hand, the girl's father, the Ecuadorian, never met his daughter and found out about her death while reading the news, because not even his in-laws, who were in Ecuador at the time of the events, let him know what had happened. Now the father is begging the United States authorities to grant him a humanitarian visa to recover his little girl's body. Imagine, it was my blood. It was her blood, and to do that to a 1.5-year-old girl is my daughter, and that piece left, I think even to this day, I think I have not tasted a bread, because nothing happens to me. The only thing that has happened to me is to cry and cry and cry and cry to remember her, see her photos, see her videos dancing so happy she was. The prosecutor showed photos of the accused smiling and partying with friends in Puerto Rico, and alongside the happy and uninterested image of Kristel, she also presented a grim recording where the baby could be heard crying and screaming for more than 2 days after being left alone in the house. But her screams were in vain because no one heard her cries for help, and Jalen stopped crying forever, alone in a dark and cold room. Conversely, prosecutor Michael C. O'Malley gave some heartfelt words for the girl. Today we remember Jaylene, a beautiful girl who was taken from this world due to the unimaginable selfishness of her mother. The idea of going on vacation for 10 days and letting her daughter starve to death in her crib is a new low in parenting. During the trip, when did she think about her daughter, and what was she thinking at that moment knowing she was at home alone? On the trip, the people who accompanied me could see that I was very distracted. I was very angry. The judge, for his part, stated when reading the sentence that Candelario committed the ultimate act of betrayal by abandoning her baby, and declared in front of the woman, "Just as you didn't let Jaylene out of her confinement until she died, you should also spend the rest of your life in a cell without freedom. The only difference will be that in prison, you will be fed and given the liquids that you denied her." The abuse of the little ones in the United States is more common than believed. In fact, approximately 4 million cases of abuse and neglect of the little ones are reported, involving nearly 7 million children annually. The highest rate of abuse is in babies under 1 year of age, and 25% of the victims are under 3 years old. Indeed, we've reported many such cases on this channel, unfortunately. But anyway, going back, the fact that they can't speak, that they can't express what's happening to them inside their homes, makes them even more vulnerable. Most of the charges reported to Child Protection Services are for negligence, followed by physical abuse and intimate abuse. But there is a considerable number of children who suffer a combination of physical, intimate abuse, and also negligence. Most cases of abuse occur within the family. The main risk factors include parents' depression and other mental health problems, as well as the use of illegal substances and alcohol. But the case of Jaylene Candelario is one of those that is hard for us to forget, both for me and surely for you. The helplessness of knowing that the victim was an innocent little person unable to escape from her own situation leaves a pain in the heart of everyone who hears this story. It leaves you marked just to imagine that she ate her own feces to survive. There is no sentence that can alleviate the pain of all those who were lucky enough to have known the little girl. apart from what I'm telling you, especially her older sister, imagine, who now must go on with her life knowing that her little sister will never play with her again. Images that captured her tender smile and a very cheerful girl is all that remains for those who lived with little Yaelin. She was only 16 months old,